Hey, what's up guys? Joe Simpson here. TechWake TV wanted to come tonight and talk to you about security, specifically security on the Synology NAS. I've recently upgraded my NAS system and I've incorporated some new fail-safes and protections to help me hopefully thwart off some type of brute force attack or an attack that would be, say, from like ransomware. I read this horrible article about a QNAP attack about a year ago and some vulnerability that was in the 7-zip utility within QNAP allowed some people to come into the system and they were able to basically zip up everybody's files and encrypt them. Now, they didn't even have to have the administrative passwords and all the information. They basically were able to just get into these machines to this vulnerability and zip up some of these files. I don't know all the details, but it sounded pretty darn scary because basically they sent a text message to all the boxes and told the people who own the boxes, hey, if you don't pay us $500 in Bitcoin, we're not going to unzip your files, and you lost all your files. Some people paid, some people didn't. So a lot of people lost a lot of data. And I wanted to talk to you today about how to maybe head off some of that and protect yourself. When you get a new NAS, it comes with some pre-configured setup stuff, and it'll have an admin account, it'll have a guest account. The first thing I want you to do when you get your NAS set up is to go into the control panel. And you can go into the user and group section. And I'm not going to click that right now because what's going to happen is if I click that, you're going to see everybody's emails and all their information. In the user and group folder, there's going to be an admin account and a guest account. Those two accounts come standard when you set up your Synology NAS. And a lot of times people just say, oh, I'm not on the internet. I'm not really worried about people getting into my system. So I'm just going to use admin password 123 and call it a day because it's just for me, it's in my house. What do I care? What you don't realize is people can squirrel back in through your computers, which are on the internet, get into your network, find your NAS, and the first thing they're going to do to try to break into your computer is go hit your admin account and try the easy ones like admin password 123, admin your wife's name and the year you were married. I mean, there's all different things that they can try that's not really that difficult to figure out. So you want to be smart. So what you can do is you can actually set up a user account under a name. Just pick a name. You could, make it Popeye the Sailor Man, and then you could give him a robust password, which brings me to the next thing that you need to do. Once you've deactivated your admin and your guest account, and you've reactivated a new account under a new name that has the administrative rights, on that administrative account that you just set up under a new name, please use a very robust password. And I mean something obnoxiously long, because you want to make sure that that just can't be brute force broken by some type of algorithm that tries to figure out passwords. And it's going to be one of those annoying, like capital Z, lowercase q, the number 2, the number 0, asterisk, lowercase e, capital P. It's like one of those deals where it's like, oh my gosh, who could ever remember that? And that's just the point. You're not going to really be able to remember it, but it's going to be robust and very difficult to break. Once you have the robust password, you're going to have a hard time recalling and putting it in. So you can either use your password memory on your browser, which isn't necessarily all that safe, but I would recommend getting a piece of software. There's actually two softwares out there that are pretty good. One's called 1Password and the other one's called Keeper. I use Keeper just because it's the one I started with. And if you go to the Keeper site here, you can see there's business, personal, and different resources that you can use. And you can go in here and get all kinds of pricing. And the nice thing is you can just set up your system with a robust password and just start putting in all your passwords out of habit into Keeper. And then that way it's going to make your life a lot less miserable when somebody's going, Dad, what's the password to this? What's the password to that? You just go, hold on, let me look in the app, and you can find it. It's a little bit of a process. It kind of sucks to have to do that in today's world. I mean, it's just where we're at. But, honestly, it's a small price to pay if it meant losing your photos and all of your stuff. So once you have the new admin account set up, once you have a robust password and the ability to remember it with a password software like Keeper or 1Password, the next thing you want to do after all that, you want to make it even harder. You want to use two-factor authentication. And what's really cool about two-factor authentication, if you go over here on the security tab on the NAS, you can see that you've got the basic security page, which gives you some selections that usually come pre-checked on here. So you have a logout timer that's going to log you out if you're on a browser. After 15 minutes, you can set it for 3, 5, 10. I set mine for 15. You can improve protection against cross-site request forgery attacks. These things I don't really know what they are, or improve security with HTTP content, with a CSP header. I have no idea what that is. Let's just be honest. But one thing I did like is the two-factor authentication. When you set up the administrator account in the NAS and Synology and DSM, under that user's account page, you can actually right there at that page set up two-factor authentication, or you could come over here to this account services tab in the security tab, and you could just say enforce two-factor authentication for all administrators, or you could even select specific users, or you could set up all users. You could kind of pick and choose. But this one already has two-factor set up for my admin. I don't have two-factor set up for my users, which I should. But, the problem is that would really cause some hardship, I think, in my family. They'd be wanting to punch me in the face. The next thing you should do in security tab is called enable auto block. That's really cool. What that does is take login attempts, and you can say if there's 8 login attempts within 5 minutes, for example, on my computer, then block this person until I unblock them. Because that's what you want. You want them to have to come to you to say, oh, dude, I forgot my password. I tried it like 10 times and somehow I got locked out. Can you help me out? If you have enable block expiration, you can say unlock it after a day, unlock it after a certain amount of time. But I just say, hey, if they're that dumb and they're going to try 8 times and just try to hardcore get into the system, then they're going to have to come talk to me to get it undone, and I'm going to give them a hard time about it. And what this prevents from a hacker standpoint is if they have some type of computer algorithm set up to come and bang away at your passwords, as soon as it tries the password on that username 8 times, it's going to get locked out. And I mean, it's done. It's gone. So they're not going to call you. They're not going to come back. So they're going to have to come in a different way or try again. It's kind of cool to set that up. It's a nice protection. Now this is going to be a little bit up here. There's 2 different file systems now with Synology. There's ext4, which is the original and what I use. So I can't do this next recommendation, but it's not really that big of a deal. And there's also a file system called, they call it BTRFS or BTRFS. I don't really know what it stands for. The way the 2 file systems work, they do things a little bit differently. But the BTRFS, if you happen to have your NAS, if you've just purchased it and you haven't set up BTRFS yet, set up your BTRFS on your NAS, and you want to use something called snapshots. Without the ability to really explain what snapshots does, because I don't actually understand exactly what it does. I've seen a few videos on snapshots and how it has the ability to keep track with the time and date of your index of your files. It's kind of like a time machine, say for a Mac. So what could happen is if somebody came in and hacked your machine and locked you up, you could basically with BTRFS go back to a different previous snapshot date and start your system back up at that point, and you would lose only the stuff from that point to the hack. It's not 100% fail-safe, and it's not really the reason you'd want to use BTRFS only, but if you have the ability to set up your system fresh with BTRFS, why not? You could use snapshots. The other thing you could use is hyper backup. So if you go over here and you go into the programs, you see right here you have hyper backup, and hyper backup can back up to either a USB drive plugged into your NAS. So if your NAS has like 20 terabytes and you want to go out and buy a 20 terabyte external drive, which I think they exist, maybe 18 or 16 terabytes, whatever the case. And you don't have to hyper back up your whole box. If you wanted to protect just certain things, you could back up to your external hard drive. And then that way, at least those items and those files would be safe onto a USB drive or some type of network drive, or you could even go back up to Google or Dropbox or High Drive. They have all different services that you can do backup to, which is really helpful. A NAS is not a backup system. It's basically a computer with a bunch of hard drives that operate collectively to create a storage packet for you. And the only safety feature that the NAS offers you is basically some type of disk redundancy. So if you have 5 disks and one fails, you could replace it. Or if you have SHR2, you could lose 2 disks and replace 2 disks and you'd still get your data back. So you need to look at the NAS as like a very robust storage facility, but it's not going to be your end-all be-all security for failures. So you do want to back this stuff up if you can. I know that's kind of hard to do, especially if you're a personal user, to back stuff up. The whole point of the NAS is to have a massive amount of storage to store stuff. So you're not likely going to have two. But like I said, you can hyper back up the most important things to an external hard drive, and at least that way, if there's a fire, you can yank that external USB and run out of the house with all your important data. Or if you get hacked, hopefully the USB survives and you get that off and you can get that data. So those are some ways to really protect yourself even farther. And that's really it. Honestly, if you were to disable your admin and disable your guest account, change your password to a robust password, those steps right there is probably going to get you 92% of the way there. If you use two-factor authentication, you've just stepped up to like a 96. And if you do, like login attempt block, or if you do some of these other settings that I've given you, I think you're going to be fine. But just try to be thorough and consistent and do this stuff up front and get used to it, because if you have it all set up and it works from the beginning, you're not going to have problems down the road. Last thing you want to do is spend all this time getting all this stuff set up, and then one day somebody come and blow it all away and you have no data and you lose your stuff. So be careful, be safe, and do the right things. If there's any tips or suggestions that you have that I totally missed, please put it in the comments and we'll talk about it in future videos.